Welcome to this explainer. Listen, if you're someone who laces up their shoes and hits the pavement for a run, a walk, or even a bike ride, this is, without a doubt, going to be one of the most important breakdowns you go through all year. Today, we're unpacking an urgent, completely no-nonsense message from Coach Adolfo Salgueiro. It's aimed squarely at all of us everyday fitness enthusiasts who share the roads with vehicles. We're going to strip away all those comfortable assumptions we make about pedestrian safety. We're going to look at the raw, unforgiving reality of the streets, and we'll discover why, at the end of the day, cars will always win. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Coach Salgueiro actually starts us off right in the middle of a jarring, totally heart-stopping street confrontation. I mean, just imagine the scene, right? A driver is suddenly forced to slam on their brakes. A startled runner is standing literally mere inches from the front bumper. And tempers just instantly flare. The runner starts screaming, and the driver rolls down their window and shouts right back, "You must make sure I see you." It's this chaotic, incredibly intense moment that happens on our streets every single day. But how exactly did they end up in this terrifying standoff in the first place?
Well, to understand that, we kind of need to flip our perspective. If you're a runner, I actually want you to put yourself directly into the driver's seat for a second. Think about this sequence of events. At 8 a.m., our author is just leaving his usual breakfast spot, having a normal morning. At 8:01 a.m., he approaches an intersection. He wants to turn left to merge into traffic. Naturally, to make sure it's safe to hit the gas, he looks to his right to check for oncoming cars. Then, at exactly 8:01 and 2 seconds, as the car begins to accelerate, a runner coming from the driver's blind left side suddenly appears right in front of the windshield. 1 second later, brakes are slammed and a total tragedy is narrowly avoided. This right here is the terrifying reality of driver blind spots. In a literal split second, a boring, everyday commute almost becomes a fatal accident.
Now, how do you think the runner reacted to this near-death experience? Well, with absolute, utter indignation. The runner immediately started complaining and, as the author notes, flipped the driver off, basically telling him he was number one before they stormed off. And this reaction perfectly captures the really dangerous illusion of safety and entitlement that so many pedestrians carry around with them. The runner felt completely justified in his anger, simply because he believed he had the legal right to be there.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core conflict we have to address today, the law versus physics. Look, should the driver have looked both ways before hitting the gas? Absolutely. From a strictly legal standpoint, the runner probably did have the right of way. But Coach Salgueiro argues that the key message here isn't about who is legally at fault. Because frankly, when you put a fragile human body up against a moving vehicle, legal arguments simply do not matter. Runners insist on exercising their right of way based on principle rather than prioritizing their own actual well-being.
The author delivers this stark, totally unshakable warning. If a car hits you, unless you are from planet Krypton, you are losing that battle. It's a brutal truth, I know, but it's one we absolutely must internalize. Flesh and bone will always lose to steel and a gas pedal. You just cannot litigate your way out of physics. There's no court case that brings you back from that.
So, to force a real mindset shift here, Coach Salgueiro draws on his extensive background in the construction industry. Think about it. Construction sites are inherently dangerous places, right? They're filled with heavy machinery, massive moving parts. It's actually not entirely unlike a busy city street. In construction, safety experts drill two fundamental rules into their workers, and the author points out that these rules extrapolate perfectly to running on the open road.
The first rule is simply this: safety is my responsibility. In construction, it really doesn't matter how much effort a contractor puts into maintaining a safe job site. If a worker doesn't wear their PPE, their personal protective equipment, they are the ones who are going to get hurt. Stories of workers suffering serious injuries because they ignored their PPE are unfortunately super common. For a runner, your PPE isn't just high-vis clothing or reflective gear. Those are great. Your real PPE is your active, personal responsibility. You have to take absolute ownership of your survival out there on the streets, completely regardless of how safe the environment seems or what the traffic laws say.
The second rule from the construction industry is a really heavy question. Who are you going home to? You leave for your workout, you say goodbye to your loved ones, and they fully expect you to come back home. Never forget that. You must do absolutely everything in your power to ensure you are indeed returning. Pushing your pace or stubbornly trying to prove a point about a crosswalk is never, ever worth sacrificing that promise to your family.
So, with those two paramount safety principles established, accepting personal responsibility and prioritizing your safe return home, the author shifts gears from safety theory to highly actionable survival tactics for the road. He calls this deconstructing the basic steps to cross paths with a vehicle. Let's dig into the safe crossing playbook.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an exact, uncompromising procedure for crossing paths with a vehicle. Step 1. Accept physics. Just acknowledge that if a truck, car, or motorcycle hits you, you lose. Period. Step 2. Empathize and look. Put yourself in the driver's seat. Look at where the driver is focusing their attention so you can actually visualize what's about to happen. Step 3. Demand eye contact. Never assume you've been seen. Wait for clear acknowledgement. And finally, Step 4. Cross and communicate. Only proceed when it is actively safe to do so.
I actually want to pause on step 3 for a second because the author uses a very specific number here, 100. Once you know 100% that you have been seen, then and only then may you cross in front of the vehicle. Not 90%, not, oh, I think they saw me. You must be exactly 100% certain you have been acknowledged before you ever step your frame in front of a multi-ton machine.
Now, what's really interesting here is how you actually get to that 100% certainty. You need to use specific micro-actions to actively investigate the car. Are they playing with a phone? Are they looking both ways? If the driver hasn't seen you, you need to wave your arms around or even yell if their window is open. Do whatever it takes. Once you have their attention and it's completely safe to cross, make sure you point at the driver if there are additional runners coming behind you, just so the driver knows to stay put. And finally, give them a wave. Thank the driver for allowing you to pass safely. It's all about active, continuous communication.
But what if you can't get their attention? What if those conditions of visibility just are not met? Well, you need a backup plan. And honestly, it requires swallowing a little bit of pride. You essentially have two choices. First, you simply stop and wait for the car to do its thing and merge into traffic. Or, second, if it is safe to do so, you run behind the car and continue on your merry way. Doing either of these two things guarantees tragedy is avoided. You might lose a few seconds on your run, sure, but you get to keep your life. Before we wrap up this explainer, Coach Salgueiro pivots to one more highly specific final warning. And this one is all about intersections with traffic lights. Because, it's not just cars pulling out of driveways or blind side streets that pose a threat. The heavily structured environment of a red light can actually lull runners into a really false sense of security.
So, the crucial point is understanding the deadly trap of a red light. Think about this scenario. Even if you have the pedestrian right-of-way to cross the street, you absolutely must ensure the drivers in the very first row see you and aren't just staring down at a glowing phone screen in their lap. Why? Because the absolute last thing you want is for that light to suddenly turn green while you're right in the middle of the crosswalk, only for a distracted driver to just hit the gas and discover you are in their path when it is way too late to brake. Never blindly trust a red light. Always verify that the first row of cars acknowledges you.
Coach Salgueiro fully admits this is an uncomfortable topic, but it's a massively necessary one. It forces us to think about our safety before a sad incident actually occurs. So, we're going to leave you with this final, provocative question to really challenge your ego. Will you drop your precious right-of-way to save your own life? Take a moment to genuinely reflect on your own running habits, and please, head down to the comments section and share your own tips or experiences regarding road safety. The author notes he reads all the comments, and so do we. Stay safe out there, remember you aren't from planet Krypton, and thanks so much for watching.